So I'm hopeful that you can see the screen. I am sharing what I am working on currently, which is work revolving around STEAM education, but how special education for inquiry can create a sense of belonging for students. And so this is a study with STEAM education, science, tech, engineering, art, and mathematics, but specifically how we can help those students with special education needs from early childhood through university. So interlacing both with STEAM and special education, they are frameworks for inclusive learning. And so combining the arts, sciences, technology, and interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary learning fosters some very creative, meaningful approaches for helping our students develop an understanding of those concepts who have special needs. So the research I'm doing, I actually had two doctoral students of mine at my university near Chicago. And the three of us spent about a year and a half looking through data and looking through responses from teachers and students concerning what seemed to assist them best with having that STEAM inquiry type of learning in their classrooms for those special needs learners. And the number one response that comes up is constructivism. And so constructivism is a way for helping those participants create knowledge. And it comes from, think of the word construct, putting things together. So it's inquiry based and exploratory. And so the ways that the data we've got so far shows that we're most effective with our special needs students in those science, tech, engineering, art, mathematics classes is through scaffolding, reflection, and collaboration. The collaboration is key, and that's one of the reasons why our study actually moved from STEM and special education to STEAM, and I'll explain that momentarily. Another aspect that came up for student learners is the personalized learning. So when we have classrooms that employ constructivist learning, students work together in teams. They question themselves and one another. And so there's a metacognition of ownership that occurs. So students become inadvertently, and one of the beauties of having STEAM education and special education learning environments is they take ownership of the learning. And the art piece seems to be one of the more important areas for actually facilitating this, because involving the arts for STEAM rather than just STEM creates an environment where students actually feel an emotional attachment to things because there's a creativity there. In our research that we've been doing with special needs students, in terms of technologies, those multi-sensory technologies seem to be popping up as the leaders in helping students actually develop skills where they may have emotional or physical disabilities or learning disabilities. So by integrating tactile, auditory, visual tools, so tactile will be those things you can touch, like let's say in a classroom with river science or aquaponics or something that they're doing, like the vermiculite or the stone or the soil or the lava rock, whatever it might be, students respond to that. And we actually, our data showed that students with special needs in the areas of autism responded most effectively through those multisensory types of STEAM learning environments. And there are assistive technologies that are out there that we recommend in our paper with like text to speech, which helps kids that have issues with, writing and things like this, where they have a learning disability in these areas. So it creates multimodal pathways. One area that stood out in particular are those maker spaces. And so the work we were doing and researching what is most effective in STEAM environments plus the students with special needs, maker spaces were highly, highly up there on the list, where students come into a learning environment, work in teams, but starting out with things like, cardboard and glue and, scissors and designing very primitive types of models of things that they want to build, and then moving on towards 3D printing, coding, laser cutters, those types of things that can actually dial in what it is they're trying to create, and they end up creating a deliverable. So there's some product that they create, and that artistic piece helps them actually connect to that more readily. So the arts integration, that is where we originally, like I said, our study was looking at STEM as a way to help special needs students learn and motivate and move forward. But it became very, very apparent that the aesthetics of learning, the artistic piece of learning, is what we recommend in our paper as more of a way to involve students where there's an artistic expression. And the data we got back was that students felt emotionally connected. And so when you're emotionally connected to something, you tend to love what you're doing. And so having that aesthetic learning type of environment helps them connect. Also, having collaborative environments, of course, in STEM, students work together in teams, they work independently, but in STEAM environments where they are working together and trying to make meaning, they develop empathy and working with each other in teams. And so, the whole team success is built on everyone in the team being successful. One of the areas that stood out as a way for teachers to plan and work is the universal design for learning and differentiation. And so differentiation is inside of a classroom. Let's say you have 25 students, where you identify the skill levels of these students and maybe break them into 3 groups. And the students in those 3 groups are given different tasks levels for the deliverables they need to provide, so that you're really, really advanced students, which is a special type of need where we have highly, highly gifted students that, the student might be 11 years old, but, can do mathematics like an 18-year-old. Where we have the universal design for learning, or what's called UDL, is break the students into groups, and they're all going to create an outcome, but maybe they have a different level of rigor for each one of those teams that they're on based on their needs. Teacher professional erudition. Erudition is different than professional development. It's different than professional learning. Professional erudition is an integration of site-based and targeted professional development. So think of, teachers that are going to be able to develop these skills most effectively need special training that's going to help them understand STEM and STEAM education, because most of our teachers do not have a science, tech, engineering, or mathematics background. Most teachers are from the humanities. They're going to even physical education. The different language teachers. That most teachers do not have the areas of STEM, and so they need professional learning that's very targeted. And so that means for our district leaders and school leaders, that they need to have sustained growth and reflective practice throughout the year, where teachers can reflect back on what they were doing. Another thing that popped up, this came up from the data we were collecting, which we were not expecting, but digital citizenship. Something that came up unexpectedly, which we weren't looking for, but it was evident in the data we were reviewing, was that students are learning differently now in 2025 than they were in the year 2000, and really wasn't that long ago, 2000. And that's because of the types of digital multimedia materials that they're using. And so a lot of the teachers that were very effective with special needs learners through like a STEAM construct, they were using digital tools to help students also communicate with others online, but also for creating environments where they were able to work together and develop digital skills that, when they're using digital tools, that they understand raw data, that you need to look through the data. You just don't look at the title of an article and think what you read is true. And so the ways that you communicate is also important, because in the year 2050, people are going to be communicating a lot differently with digital tools than they are now. So that was something that came up as in terms of students needing to feel connected digitally through one another, but also developing social skills that you need to use for effective use of digital tools. And so mindful design, this is what we end our study with, is looking at creating environments for STEM and STEAM actually helps foster a purpose and empathetic and inclusive learning. So inclusivity means that students feel included despite what their learning levels may be. And so it helps create that environment where they nurture creativity and community. So this is a study that's ongoing, and I've listed several of our references that we utilize in our study. And I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you're free to ask those now.